Okay, so so we are preparing for AZ305, and in AZ305 there's a unit which talks about designing of an infrastructure solutions. Okay, so before we get into what we are going to study in designing of an infrastructure solution, when we are saying when you're talking about an infrastructure in terms of Azure, what basically it means that, see, you're going to either host your applications as in you could be hosting your website, you could be hosting your app, or you could be bringing your data into the cloud. So these are some of the things that you would be doing, right? But when you do it in Azure, or when you do it in any other cloud, the first thing that is the most important thing is your infrastructure. And when we talk about infrastructure, you can understand it in terms of building a business or building a building, just a building, right? Before you decide on, the sofa that you're going to bring in or the TV that you're going to bring in, you first decide the location of it, like where your building is going to be, how many rooms there are going to be, how do you make sure that your building is secure, no one can enter into it, what are the different doors that you are going to have, windows that you have, what are the type number of rooms that you are going to have, what material you are going to use to create that building. It is similar when it comes to Azure cloud. When you are building the infrastructure of your cloud, these are the things that you need to consider, right? Not the room and the bricks and all whatever, but the first thing that you have to make sure is that first that your infrastructure is set up. Okay, and when in Azure you're talking about the infrastructure, there are four things that we are going to study. One of them being design of your compute services, design for your compute services. How do you design a complete Azure compute solution? Then you design your application architecture, you design your network solutions, and you design your migration. So if I have to give you an overview of all of these, when we talk about design of an Azure compute solution, compute is basically your it's basically the software and the hardware that you're going to be using. Okay, and then when you go about designing your application architecture will talk about, okay, what are the different applications that you can host, how you're going to connect your applications to other clouds, what's the kind of caching that you're going to do, how you're going to do a API integration, all of those things. Then we talk about designing of your network solution. So when you're designing your network solution for your Azure, what you will do is like how you're going to design, like how you're going to connect your app or your website or your data with the other with the outside world, how you're going to do that. Okay, what are the patterns that you're going to choose, what is the how you're going to make it secure, basically your network. Okay, and then the fourth is your design of your migration services. So when we talk about designing of your migration services, basically what it means is that there are, see, right now Azure cloud or any cloud services, it's pretty in some ways a pretty new thing that is happening. Before that, all your data was stored in on-premise. When we say on-premise, it means like, for example, if I am a business owner, whatever data that I have, I would buy the hardware for it, I would buy the software for it, I would own it, and I would have it in my system. So it would be my responsibility to make sure that it is running fine. I would have an entire IT team that would take care of it. With the coming of cloud, what has happened is the cloud vendors, they are taking the responsibility of maintaining the hardware, the software, and all of those things, and you are kind of renting those things from them. So what is happening is that most companies are now migrating to cloud because of there are different reasons. One of them being the fact that some of these small business owners don't want the hassle of setting up an entire IT infrastructure for them and then finding the resources that can take care of it, and then moving on with the business and then taking care if it doesn't fail down. So cloud vendors are providing all of those possibilities. So when we're talking about setting up an Azure migration, it basically is giving you what are the different resources or what are the different techniques that you're going to use when you would be migrating your data or your tool from on-premises to cloud. If you have to sum it up, in the Azure Infrastructure Solutions, we're going to talk about how we are going to design a compute service for our cloud, which basically means how you're going to design the hardware, software for your cloud. Then we are going to talk about the design of your network solution. Basically, it means like how are you going to figure out what are the network components that you need to create, how you need to make, how will you make sure that your network is secure, what are the things that you're going to do. Then you're going to design your application services. So for example, if I'm hosting an application, I need to be knowing, okay, how am I going to connect an API to that application of mine? How am I going to choose the delivery services or the connectivity services for my application, and so on and so forth. And then you are going to design your migration solution. So when you're designing your migration solutions, you basically are deciding, okay, if I'm migrating from on-premises to cloud, how am I going to do, what are the techniques, what is the best way, and how it's going to be useful. And these are the things that we're going to be learning in the unit of design infrastructure solutions for AZ305.